Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you all here. For those who don't know me, my name's Allie Pruitt. I'm the CEO and founder of the Impact Project. I run this project alongside my co-founders and board of directors members, TJ Joshua. I see TJ's on the call, and Anthony Jackson. And we're so excited to welcome you all to season 3 for our episode. One more time. Okay. And this is our third season of doing this. For those who are familiar, this is our second episode. And we're really excited today to teach you all the things that they can't teach you in law school. Confidence, work ethic, and professionalism. But before we get into the conversation, we have some introductions to make. We're joined today by Mitch Jackson, who is a #1 bestselling author on Amazon, a top trial lawyer out in California, infamous on Clubhouse. He's really just one of a kind all around, and we're so excited to be welcoming him. We're also welcoming Jason Pica, who's one of my great friends from law school. We just took the bar together, and he is truly one of a kind. He is the vice president already as a just new law school graduate at Chicago Advocate Legal. He works in divorce and family law, and he's truly just someone you should know. So we're excited to be welcoming them, and I will be co-hosting today's session and working on all of this today with our brand new interns. So the Impact Project just hired 3 interns. I'm going to have them briefly just tell you who they are, and we'll get started with our questions today. And last thing, if you haven't been here before, we're pretty informal. We want your questions to be answered. So if you have any questions at any point, throw them in the chat. We will be giving away a scholarship at the end of today's session for someone who engages with our panelists. So interns, let everyone know who you are, and we'll get started.
I'll go ahead. My name is Tolu Odwangbo, and I'm a 2L at UIC Law. I currently clerk for the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation.
Good morning, bright and joyful success session attendees. My name is Amina Jackson. I am an undergrad at DePaul University. I'm studying business and pre-law, and thank you.
That was a great way to welcome people, Amina. Hi, everyone. My name is Nura Zaki. I'm a 2L at UIC Law, and I previously worked as an organizer for a couple of years before law school. So the topic of professionalism is one that I see as being so crucial to getting your name out there and meeting people and growing your network. So I'm thrilled to be a part of the Impact Project and to be among all of you this morning. And I'm actually going to kick us off with our first question for our panelists. So today we're talking about personal branding, professional communication, and defeating imposter syndrome. So before we talk about a little bit about the stories of both of you, Mitch and Jason, and how you are where you are now in terms of the evolution of your story, we want to talk a little bit about how it started, because of course we have a lot of law students listening and pre-law students. So when you think about where you began in law school and deciding to attend law school, how did you see yourself as a student in the classroom, and how has that changed in developing your personality as a lawyer?
Jason, would you like to do the honors?
Sure, I can. The question was, how did you see yourself as a law student, and what was the other one? I'm sorry.
Yes, and how has that changed since becoming a lawyer?
Okay, so I think you're right. It does begin back with history. And so, going into a JD program, I was 100% set divorce, and when you ask other lawyers and others that are around you in the classroom, everybody's like, why the hell would you want to do that? But for me, it goes back to when I was 1. So my parents, biological parents, divorced when I was almost 1. And I mean, their litigation lasts until I was 18. It just constant. I had 2 GALs growing up. I had supervised visits. My biological dad was on a sober link. I had it all for 18 years. And then both of my parents remarried. My biological dad was married for 16 years and then he got a divorce. Then my mom was married for 20 years and then she got a divorce. So actually, and quite honestly, I don't know how to operate unless every day somehow I mention the word divorce. I really don't. So it kind of became natural. And going into your question, how did I see myself in the classroom? I'm going to be honest. I had a better childhood than most when it comes to, half of my life. And then the other half of, course, was always up and down, up and down. And that's how I viewed getting my undergrad, master's, and now this one too. You have up and downs. And I was 100% used to that because it's been my whole life. Nothing's ever been smooth. So how did I see myself as a person in a classroom? I viewed it as, and I would tell Allie this often, it was just, hey, some days we're going to F up, other days we're going to be on our game, right? And you have to be able to roll with the punches. Oftentimes we would build out, this is what we're going to do all day, every day, and we would only complete half. I'm like, hey, you know what? I did as best as I could today. Tomorrow, I'm going to wake up even earlier, hit the ground running. And I think your last question was how long did it, what about now? In my position in my career, I have, and I'm confident in this, I have much more knowledge of a divorce than I think anyone else my age. And that's only because of I've been dealing with it my whole life, as well as I have worked at small legal aids, as well as the biggest divorce offices in the nation. And I've also been using my 711 license now for 2 years. So what do I view it as now? I view it as, given my history, given the JD program and all that, I recognize now that I know a lot, but I still need to learn a lot. And that's part of the reasons why I continue to participate in things like this, because I learn a lot every day.
I love that. I love that. Should I play right off of Jason?
Take it away, man.
Yeah, Jason, I'll tell you what, 35 years practicing law, trying cases here in Southern California. I still look forward to, and sometimes I don't, learning something new every single day. It never stops, you guys. And I think if you have the mindset where it's okay to give yourself permission to understand and appreciate the laws quickly changing, especially with technology, especially with consumer behavior and consumer expectations, especially these 19 months with this upside down COVID-19 world, changes in the air. And normally I approach change with this type of approach. Have a nice day. Okay, but check this out, you guys. I don't want to spill this on me, but if you can see the bottom of this cup, every once in a while, you have to drop gloves and send the right message to opposing counsel. So my story started on a guest ranch in Tucson, Arizona. Grew up cowboy, horses. My mom and dad had people traveling from all over the world to play cowboy for a week at the Saddle and Surrey Ranch. And I watched how they interact with their guests. And a lot of very well-known guests, movie stars, Rock Hudson, John Wayne. I've got a picture of Walt Disney on my mom's horse, Rome, and a lot of other interesting people. And what I noticed with my mom and dad is they always had conversations with our guests about their personal lives, about their interests, the hobbies, their passions. Rarely did my mom and dad talk to them about their latest movie or the big contract that they signed. And specifically with sports entertainers and athletes, it was always a very personal type of conversation. I was the first one to graduate, to go to college in my family, and certainly the first one to become a lawyer in my family. And I decided to follow this journey because I wanted to protect people from the bullies in the world. I always was that guy that stepped in and tried to make a difference and right a wrong and fix a problem. In college, I was a waiter. I worked, front door at some of the local bar and wine spots around the University of Arizona. I managed to squeeze a 4-year degree into a 5-year experience at the University of Arizona, and I would do it again in a second. And I'm sharing this with you because while I was never the brightest bulb in the lamp, one thing I always did bring to the table is once I had my mind set on something, I could outwork and out hustle and sometimes even outthink the other side. Okay. So that was kind of my journey as I was approaching law school. I had a couple family friends that we would go scuba diving with. One was a local assistant district attorney in Tucson, Arizona. And I loved listening to Fred Bellman's stories from the courtroom. Fred's no longer with us, but I do remember after I got admitted into law school, I was still waiting tables, and Fred and his wife came in and I was their waiter. I didn't know Fred was coming in. He goes, "Mitch, what the heck are you doing with your life?" And I told him, "I'm starting law school next month in Southern California." And I just remember how excited he was, just seeing that expression on my face. And I was excited seeing that expression on his face. And so for me, it's one of those journeys where it's just something that I really wanted to do. And I've never looked back. Best profession in the world. But let me just fast forward real quick. The first 5 years of practicing law here in Southern California, I tried to be like everyone else. I tried to find success by mirroring and duplicating what I saw other very good lawyers doing. And by the way, in Orange County, California, we have some of the top lawyers in the world. I mean, I've got friends of mine that have handled multi-billion-dollar class action cases. I've got friends of mine that created the case law, their dads, that created the case law in the books that we used in our torts class. The exploding Ford Pinto gas tank case, one of my friends, my roommate in law school, that was his dad's case. My friend's now a judge in San Bernardino. But when that case was being briefed, I remember Tom leaning over to me and saying, "Hey, Mitch, I have a feeling I'm going to get called to brief this case." The point of the story is those first 5 years, I tried to blend in. At about year 6 or year 7, I realized that to stand out above everyone else, I needed to give myself permission to tap into who I am, what I believe in, my human side, to be unique, right? Just to be myself. Once I started doing that with what I did outside of the courtroom with respect to activities and hobbies and interests and passions, what I did and how I went about that when it came to participating in bar association meetings, when I did that to embrace the internet, this thing called the internet that none of us knew about back in 1995, 1996, and put up a first website that resulted in a multi-million-dollar case coming into the firm 6 months later. Once I did that by embracing social media and especially live video, everything changed. Okay. And so my initial message to everyone here is to always lead with empathy, allow compassion to serve as your compass, especially in today's world, be professional, but complement all of those things with being you, with being who you are. The truth of the matter is, in the legal profession, what most of the other lawyers in town are doing, whether it's how they litigate their cases, how they sign up their clients, how they market or brand their practices, most of the lawyers are doing it wrong. They're doing something they're watching someone else doing instead of tapping into their own superpowers and really complementing what they bring to the table. Everybody here in today's Zoom brings something unique that the rest of us don't bring. Give yourself permission to tap into that uniqueness and then model your behavior around that. And I can promise each and every one of you, moving forward, you're going to have a meaningful, enjoyable experience when it comes to the practice of law. And you're never going to look back. And please, in 10 or 15 or 20 years, if you're buying into what I'm saying, share this message with a young law school student or lawyer who you see as being frustrated, or who you see are having some challenges about the decision of becoming a lawyer. It's really something that's just changed everything about who we are and what we do, not only me, but at my firm. So I encourage everyone just to go ahead and embrace your uniqueness and enjoy the journey because as Jason mentioned, the sun's going to come up tomorrow and you're going to have a new shot at whatever it is you were struggling with today. And so that's my initial message. It's, you know, jumping things off today. It's just be yourself and have fun. It's a great profession.
I love that. That's such amazing advice from both of you. And I think, you know, where I want to go with this is some questions that we had received before doing this session. That is the unique overlap between the profession, your social media presence, and being you. And I think oftentimes, you know, I've had students ask me, like, how do you portray yourself? How can you be yourself in a world or in a profession that tends to be very rigid? Nora and I talked before, we don't want to say the word conservative. It tends to have political things, but you get what we're saying, right? In a world that, you know, a lot of lawyers, a lot of firms try to limit who you are to blend in with their, you know, culture, their you know, roadmap of what their lawyers look like. So how do you, both of you, Mitch, you're famous on Instagram and Clubhouse and all of these things, and Jason, you've really, you know, sort of trademarked yourself in a way as this divorced child, and you've been interviewed about your story and branding your unique story into the lawyer that you are. Both of you have done that, and you've done it so well. So how do you tell students that are navigating through law school, you know, giving them some tips as to how to blend those, you know, things, their uniqueness plus their profession, plus their social media into one package that makes them a marketable person in this field?
I think branding and marketing, and I don't like the M word marketing. Let's just go with branding and building relationships. I think it's everything, especially when you're starting off as a new lawyer in a small firm or a large firm. And for me, the important part about what you see me doing on social media is I actually, from the bottom of my soul, believe that your lawyers make society a better place. And there's so much misinformation out there about what we do and what we bring to the table. Normally by large lobbyists, the insurance industry, big pharmacy, whatever it might be, that they portray lawyers in a bad light. And one of the beautiful things about social media is it allows us to show the consumer, to show the world around multiple time zones that we are human beings who care about our local, national, and global communities. And by creating content that's useful, valuable. There's three components to great content on social media, everybody. It has to be somewhat appropriately entertaining, number one. Your content should be unique, number two. And number three, it needs to be easily shareable by your community or people that find your content interesting and they want to share it with their family, their friends, or people at the office. What I've noticed is that by embracing and tapping into the power of social, it allows you to do all the above, help more people than ever, shine a light so that when you're picking a jury, and this is what happens over time, is the jurors will look at what they see on TV and what they're watching on social media, and they bring these concepts into the courtroom as to who you are, what you stand for, and what this type of case is about. And so I guess what I'm saying is the more good information we can share in a way that's true to who you are, how does it actually reflect you? That's how you can stand out above all the noise. You can rise above and to the top in a sea of sameness and really share your message and build your brand. I approach this from a unique perspective, everyone. And Jason, just a heads up, maybe another 30 seconds. My daughter's a second year at Shepherd Mullen, large law firm up in Century City. When we asked AJ, you know, when she was graduating from UCLA, is this really, why do you want to become a lawyer? Her response was, Dad, I've watched you and Mom. I met my wife in law school. My wife's my partner, everyone. I watched you and Mom over the years help people, and I want to help people too. So that was kind of her mindset of what she was watching us doing. As a lawyer, if you can help, instead of one-to-one across your desk or a one-to-one Zoom, if you can help 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000, or 1 to 10,000 with a weekly Zoom show, or by consistently sharing helpful content on Instagram or on TikTok or wherever it is, wherever you do your digital dance, I encourage you to do so, subject to obviously state bar rules and regulations, but do so in a way where you get to show who you are and what you enjoy. I didn't put my white, suit with my tie on this morning for this Zoom. I rolled in off the beach. I've got time to do this. And at 9:15, I've got to do something else. Just be who you are and people will relate to you. And social media allows you to do that. I could talk about this topic forever, but I want to give Jason the mic.
Sure, thanks. I'm gonna let the professional talk about social media, because to be honest, I'm not on it probably as much as I should be on it. Given a lot of divorce law, you get your clients by, being out there, being present. But I want to come at it from a different perspective. So I think when it comes to branding and knowing how to balance everything, I think it begins with the interview. So I've been interviewing around, and I'm kidding you not, all of my interviews last at least an hour, maybe a little bit more. I ask them just as many questions as they ask me, because I know I have a lot of personality. My jokes about a divorce and all the stuff that comes with it is pretty dark, but that's how I manage it, right? So asking them what's the office culture like, because I don't want to walk into anywhere where I'm not able to be who I am. And going off of that is you have to learn the ability to make observations of the people that you learn with. I mean, the people that you work with. So, for example, when I've worked at a couple new offices, and I often spend like the initial week or two just learning everyone, just watching. And then after that, I slowly open up to those who I believe I might match with a little bit more. Maybe this lawyer over here I can reach her initially, and then she can connect me to another lawyer over here that's a little bit more private, right? So the ability to interview whomever is your interviewer, as well as doing a lot of observation once you actually get that job. And then going off of that, you have to learn about the office that you're walking into. You need to really learn how the office operates. So, for example, I think everybody here would rather have more money than not, right? Money's nice. I like money, right? But going into a divorce law, people often mention, well, you can't make any money. Sure, you won't make as much money as the people in a corporate law or what have you, but I know plenty of divorce lawyers here that are millionaires. I have a colleague who makes at least, I don't know, $70K every month. So, hey, just saying, if you make that much every month, you're pretty good. You don't have to be the richest of the rich, right? But you're pretty good. And what I'm getting at is, had I listened to everybody that was around me telling me, you're too smart to enter into that area law, you won't make any money in that area law, I would not have learned all that I know now. And I agree with Mitch about really finding your uniqueness. So I think one of the things that is unique about me is I also have a master's, and it's in a social work. So I have right here, because I was just looking to see, because my new client definitely has a mental health issue that she does not know about. I'm like, how do I best represent you trying to deal with any kind of mental health issue that you have? So I have this other education, and I got my, a DSM-5 here, right? And so my uniqueness is dealing with cases that other lawyers don't want to deal with. Dealing with clients that have mental health challenges, dealing with child abuse, child neglect. I love that stuff because I'm able to use basically both halves of who I really am. And there are many lawyers out there who are unable to do that. So I 100% agree. You have to know your uniqueness.
Jason said something. I just want to compliment. Can I just follow up real quick, Allie? Because I know there's questions. Jason, you said, taking cases that are difficult or other lawyers may not be interested in taking for whatever reason, that case resonated with you. And I think as a lawyer, when you find those cases that resonate with you, you can make magic happen. You can change lives. We had a wrongful death case representing a wonderful Black family whose Persian Gulf veteran son, who was living with him at the time, was killed by 4 white officers in my client's home. The clients originally went to Johnny Cochran's firm. You guys all know Johnny Cochran. He's was out here in LA, famed O.J. Simpson civil rights lawyer. And the firm had a conflict of interest and wasn't able to help this family. The family ended up in our firm, and the husband and I just hit it off. And I wanted to go to bat and take care of this family. We litigated the case for 5 years in a very conservative Riverside County, and the jury came back with a record-setting wrongful death verdict that resulted in my 2009 Orange County Trial Lawyer of the Year award. Now, had I not taken a risk, and had I not taken this case that frankly a lot of other well-known lawyers in Southern California didn't want for whatever reason, none of that wouldn't have happened. But like what Jason just mentioned, this family resonated with me. And I told you earlier about taking on the bullies, and I wasn't going to let that happen to this good family. And I think once you give yourself permission to take the difficult cases, or to take the cases that nobody else wants, that's how you can carve out your niche and make a difference and have a meaningful career. And so, Jason, I just wanted to kind of follow up on that, because sometimes, it's just a matter of doing what you feel is right for you. And I will say, if I was a divorce attorney, there are so many high-profile divorces happening every week across the world. Every time one of these high-profile divorces took place, Jason, I would hop on a short live video and I would newsjack that. In other words, I would talk about, this is my understanding as to what's happening. These are the 3 issues that they're going to be talking about and litigating in this case. I don't know who's right or wrong, but in Chicago, if this was happening, and I know this is a Hollywood, LA type of case, here are 3 things that I think everybody needs to pay attention to if they find themselves in this situation. I think when you use social media to newsjack trending topics or things that other people are watching on TV, listening to on the radio, watching on social media, and you inject in a politeful, kind way your 2 cents worth as a lawyer, it's magic. That's probably been one of the most important things I've ever done to help build my brand on social media. In fact, it's so powerful that now a good friend of mine, David Merriman Scott, who's wrote some best-selling marketing books, he invited me to join him on stage at Tony Robbins 2 years in a row in front of 2,000 deep pocket, high profile people, which you can only imagine what that's going to do to your brand, what that's going to do with respect to new clients coming to your firm. But it's only because I was newsjacking while taking a run, while out on the paddleboard, breaking news pops up on my phone. I just go live on Twitter, share my 2 cents worth, get back to the office, and I'll have 10 to 15 messages from reporters who want to follow up on that breaking news story. So there are a lot of ways that you can embrace who you are. You can embrace social media to build your brand. When you build your brand, you have more potential clients. When you have more potential clients, you can pick and choose which ones you believe in, which ones you want to represent. And then at the end of the day, you can create a business model that allows you to take care of your family and enjoy your life and help your community with donations, both monetarily and physically. And so it's just a big, consistent circle of being out there, of adding value, of making a difference, and learning how to say no when it's appropriate to say no, which we do about 18 out of 20 potential clients that come into the office. The response is no. And then saying yes to the right cases. If you learn how to say no, it'll give you the opportunity to say yes to the right cases.
I just want to tap in on this, you guys. We're getting so much amazing advice. And so I think one thing I just want to display here is that your brand, your ability to say no, your hustle, that starts now, right? It starts in law school. So even though you're in law school and we're all kind of navigating through this stuff, your brand, who you are, who you want to be, starts now, right? Your outreach, your giving your 2 cents also starts now. Right? I always say to every student, I know Jason, Mitch, you guys can probably relate to me on this, is you blink and law school's over. The days are long, the years are short. And so you have to start your hustle now because it's going to be too late, right? 10 years down the road, trying to figure out, how do I do this? What do I want to be? What cases do I want to take? It's too late. So all of this advice you're getting now and taking risks and having the right mindset can really apply to simply raising your hand and volunteering in class, right? That's a risk. It's a different risk than taking a case, right, later on, but it's a risk you can take now and sort of, use this advice to just make your law school experience the best as well. So, sorry, I just wanted to interject there. Nura, let's get into a little bit in here. I know Kate's question about confidence and imposter syndrome. So why don't you tee us up for that?
Right, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that that's a great segue to these questions because they address, when we're talking about personal branding and hustling, I can see how someone in the audience might, have an eye roll or also just feel intimidated at the thought of putting yourself out there, especially before all of these things that we've been talking about come together, like knowing yourself, channeling your personal experiences to your professional life. So before all of these things kind of feel like one, or before the confidence comes, I think it would be really helpful to hear what are some strategies that we can use, or what are some experiences that either of you have had that helped to in response to Kate and Chloe's questions, to gain that confidence, or maybe act before the confidence comes, and also to figure out what kind of law is a best fit.
I'll tell you what worked for me is, from day one, always work on your communication and persuasion skills. So if you have some free time while you're in law school, which you're not, but I think you know what I'm talking about, pick up Carmine Gallo's Talk Like Ted. And if I mention any books, you guys, just DM me if you need me to send you the links or remind you as to what I mentioned. Carmine's a friend of mine. He interviewed 200 top TED speakers. What makes them so powerful? And he actually wrote a chapter in my book on social media, on how to communicate on social media. And I tap into what Carmine teaches in Talk Like TED. Okay, it's a great book. Another great book to look at and read that I always recommend is The Tall Lady with the Iceberg by Ann Miller. It's how to use metaphors, how to use storytelling in everything we do, whether it's asking for a raise, whether it's, working your way out of working on a file over the weekend, whatever it might be. I think learning how to use the power of metaphor is key. And Ann Miller, in one of her metaphors, helped me because I reached out to her the night before a closing argument. Ann, I'm struggling with this issue. Can you come up with a metaphor? And she did, just as a favor, which was the defendants were playing Russian roulette with my client's life. They're putting a bullet in the chamber, they were spinning it and didn't know where it was going to land. I used that metaphor in my closing argument, which resulted in a multi-million-dollar verdict. It was because of Ann's metaphor. So work on your negotiation skills. But going back to, you're in law school, you're studying your asses off. I get it. It wasn't easy for me. I actually enjoyed it, but it wasn't easy. You're in a unique opportunity right now where you can reach out to judges and say, is there any chance we can grab lunch? I'm a first-year law school student. I'm thinking about going to law school, and I'd really like to pick your brain about the decisions you made in your career. Or I know you had that XYZ case. I'd love to hear more about it, the inside scoop. If you're social distancing, you're not able to grab lunch, we can do this over a Zoom. As a matter of fact, what do you enjoy having for lunch? And then you Uber Eat or DoorDash over to that judge, to that senior partner in a law firm, to that well-known lawyer across town, whether it's in your state or on the other side of the country, lunch on you 5 minutes before you go live on Zoom, and you have that 30-minute conversation. One of the beautiful things about being a law school student is that lawyers and judges love being here for you. We know you're our future. All you have to do is ask, and we can put 20 minutes, 30 minutes aside, and we can tell war stories, we can give advice. You can take it with a grain of salt. Not all the advice you're going to get is going to work for you, but I would absolutely be working on my network. I'd be scheduling one of these Zoom lunches or dinners or drinks, whatever it might be, once a week. I think it's all about networking, and whether it's in the legal community or maybe CEOs, business owners in the type of area of law that you're interested in, you can reach out to them. And I promise you guys, you're going to get more yeses than you do nos. But look around. I mean, how many of you are actually doing this on a weekly basis? And I'm guessing probably nobody or not too many people. So start doing things like that to start making these connections, because if you were to reach out to me, I don't expect you to be able to come in and solve my legal problem on this challenging case. What I'm expecting is somebody to, frankly, ask me open-ended questions, hear my story. I'm interested in you because you're interested in what I've done, and you start that relationship. So that's where I would start. You don't need the wins. You don't need the experience to do that. And in fact, what you do need, you've got, which I don't have anymore. You've got that 1L status, which is going to open up more doors for you than you probably ever imagined. What do you think, Jason?
I'm going to harp right off that and kind of make it more of an umbrella. And it's really what I kind of go by every day. You have to be intentional with everything that you do. So for example, I know the beginning of 1L year, everybody, they want you to, be in this group and be in this group. And I wasn't that person at all. I went to class, I went home until I figured out, okay, so which groups are actually gonna do something? Like if we're just gonna have the meetings, I'm not gonna be here. Sorry. What groups can I help? What groups can help me? It's all about networking. I look at everything as a transaction. What can I get out of this? What can I get to be intentional? Now, Mitch mentioned something about interviewing judges. Cook County has one of the biggest, I actually think it might be the biggest domestic relations departments. We have about 50 judges. So during my last year, I did an independent research project where I wrote a paper. It's not published yet, but I would love for all of you to read it. And so part of what it was is I was intentional. I said, listen, so for the past year, I've been going to a court alone most of the time using my license. I'm like, okay, so how can I get to know these judges even better? What I did was I intentionally made that article about interviewing domestic relations judges. So I interviewed at least half. They all know who I am based off this. And now going to court at 11 to Judge Powers, he never says my last name right. Mr. Pica II. And I'm like, yes, Judge. Remember, we once talked about how, I'm not married yet. I don't have any kids yet. There is like a number 3 is not out there yet. He mentions that now every time that I come into his courtroom, every time. Like, hey, do you have a kid yet? I'm like, no, Judge. There is no, there is no Jason Anthony Pica III yet. So I am gonna be honest. I really only wrote the paper. I was interested in what I was writing, but I knew at the end of the day, having an hour with half of the judges that I will be with my entire career is very smart. And then again, going off that is the or I guess going off that and then going back, the uniqueness of who you are, that's been mentioned a couple of times here. So I know the lawyers personally who have divorced or who have represented Jennifer Hudson, Michael Jordan, Dwayne Wade. They literally live 2 blocks, or their office is 2 blocks away from where I live now. And what I'm getting at is they all told me, they're like, hey, listen, if you're good in this area and you want to represent high assets, you will be very well off because there are no African Americans. Initially, when I heard that, I was like, okay, well, I know that there's Black lawyers, but then when I looked at the 3 largest divorce offices in the nation who only do a divorce only are right here downtown. And there's about 40 lawyers at each one. Out of those 40, guess how many are Black? 1. And his name is also Jason, so it must just be something, I don't know. But anyway, there's 1. So imagine while I progress, and hopefully one day I end up at one of these offices, or maybe even I do my own thing. The uniqueness of who I am, being African American in an area of law where there are little to no African Americans, and also in an area of law where it is primarily women, is really going to stand out. And I let people know that all the time. In my most recent interviews, I know you can see me and you can see that I'm not white. You can see that I'm Black, right? But I say it in every interview. I'm like, listen, one of the benefits of hiring, I kind of mention it more appropriately, right? But, it's just us here right now. But I tell them in every interview, I'm Black. Every time, well, when the courthouse was open, I kid you not, at least once every week, I walk in there, somebody's asking me, who's also African American, hey, can you represent me, or anything like that, because they want another African American there who really holistically gets who they are. So, I mean, hey, I think a lot of this comes back to, like Mitch was mentioning earlier, what is unique about you and how can you play off that? That's exactly what I'm doing. Hey, I know you can see me, but I'm Black. You need me at your office. At the big office that I worked at, they told me straight up, and then I'm done, that they lose a lot of money because they don't have anyone there that is African American. And so in the back of my mind, the observation piece, I'm like, okay, well, there are plenty of African American lawyers here. So what is it about them knowing that they're losing out on money? Lawyers like money. They know they need a person that's African American. Why won't they hire them? So that's just me using my uniqueness, but also me observing what's happening in the background.
This is all I hope you guys are seeing, right? All the things of our session today, confidence, work ethic, professionalism, they all go together, right? When you're intentional about what you're doing and you put yourself out there and you gain that confidence and you hustle like nobody's ever hustled before, and that work ethic, and you're professional about it, this is who you can be, right? You can be the very best version of yourself and the most successful version of yourself when you tap into those things that you don't read about in a book. Now we have some great books we can read about in the chat, thanks to Mitch. But those are some things, right? So I know we're kind of rounding out here in the last couple of minutes. So the last question I want to ask you both today is a very important one, I think. And we've talked about networking. We've talked about being intentional. We've talked about putting yourself out there, like Mitch said in the chat, no bad questions. But what are the do's and don'ts of professional communication? Because I think students struggle with, well, what do I say? I saw we had in the chat, Tom, if you reach, how do you do that? What do you say? And I know students can make mistakes. I learned at a young age from a boss, I still give her credit to this day as a young woman. A lot of us use a lot of exclamation points. And it doesn't come across as professional. And my boss had to tell me that. You're not excited about everything you say, Allie. And that's how it comes across when every sentence has an exclamation point. And I used to sign off on my emails with best, comma, Allie. And she said, best what? This just doesn't even make any sense, right? You need to change. So there's so many little things in the way you communicate that's intentional, but also professional. And students really struggle with learning those things because, again, they don't teach you that stuff in school. You got to have somebody who tells you this email is trash. If I was a judge, I wouldn't read it. You know, how do you get to that point? So what do you see, both of you gentlemen, as the do's and don'ts of professional communication, and just any last words of advice in our last 10 minutes here?
Well, Allie, when it comes to me, you're talking to somebody that actually, in response to a ridiculous motion, and I did know the judge, I attached see Exhibit A, and it was a cartoon of a lawyer standing in front of a jury, telling the jury, forget about the facts, forget about the evidence, just listen to what I'm going to tell you, because the defendant's argument was ridiculous. And that was my opposition, everybody, and we won that particular motion. I don't recommend that for everybody, but sometimes you want to be different in order to be understood and in order to stand out. So when it comes to communicating, both as a law school student, as an attorney, even as a judge, you know, I have a real problem with how the legal community wants us all to communicate. It's almost like, unless you're doing it like everybody else, you're doing it wrong. And I've served as a judge pro tem. I know what it's like to go through a lot of pleadings. I've taken on some of the largest law firms in the world and kicked their ass in court. And I'm just telling you guys, I actually feel like, think about creating your legal pleadings, writing your emails in a way that does separate you from everyone else. So Allie, if you were to sign off best, I'm okay with that. You know, my whole thing is John Wooden, one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. If you talk to my kids, when I dropped them off every morning when they were younger, in middle school, hey guys, what are you going to do today? Make our day a masterpiece, Dad. Every time I sign off on video, my podcast, and emails, I always, you know, hey, this was a great conversation. Make sure to always make each day your masterpiece. It's not sincerely, it's not best regards. People remember that. So you got to pay attention to who your audience is, right? You got to pay attention to what they're expecting. You want to deliver, but a couple of things that I do that work really well when I'm in oral argument, when I'm writing a brief, is I always make it super easy for the judge or the trier of fact to immediately understand what the problem is, why it's a big problem, and what the solution is. And then I come back and backdoor it with the facts and with the evidence. So during an opening statement, unlike most lawyers that stand up and introduce themselves, thank everyone for being there, thank the opposing counsel and the judge. I mean, come on. The jury doesn't want to be there. Nobody wants to be there. It's boring. What I do is I stand up, in that first 2 minutes, I tell an entertaining, provocative story. I take that jury back by the hand. Let's go back in time. Let's stand on that corner and listen to that 46 Ford drive by with gas coming out of the, you know, and I'll explain using sight, smell, taste, and touch, while incorporating what evidence I'm going to be sharing during the trial into that first 2 minutes. It's something that's very unique that a lot of lawyers don't do. I think in a trial brief, you can do the same thing. In that first paragraph or two, you can dive right into what you want in a professional way, make your point. As a matter of fact, I have a 5-step process I'll just run through real quick. Number one, you got to state the problem. What's the issue? Why are we here? Number two, you want to agitate the problem. If we don't fix this problem, and I do this when I'm speaking, when I'm writing, when I'm giving a closing argument, you guys, state the problem. Number two, agitate the problem. If we don't fix this problem, how is it going to be worse? How is it going to affect all of us? How is it going to not allow justice and equity to prevail in this case? Number three, offer a clear and concise solution. Number four, show how the solution applies to your specific audience, this particular jury, this particular audience I'm speaking to. Number five, a call to action. In court, it's a jury verdict form that's laid out where I'm filling it in front of them. We're not taking anything for granted. During this 5-step process, I'm sharing stories, I'm using metaphors, I'm highlighting some things and skipping through other things. But the point is learning how to communicate effectively, okay, in the way that I've shared the resources in the chat here. That's what I've used to to win multi-million dollar mediations, arbitrations, and jury trials in cases where the other side offered $1 to settle the case, in cases that no other lawyers wanted. The resources I just shared with you in this chat are what allowed me to do that. A friend of mine, Craig Valentine, was the 1999 world champion of public speaking. Craig's got a course, Edge of Your Seat Storytelling, and he talks about this tap and transport technique, whether you can do it in writing, on a podcast, in a video, or in a court of law, or if you're in talking to the senior partner, asking for a raise or maybe a permanent position with the firm. And this tap and transport approach really did change everything for me. And so I'm not sure if it's still out, but if you grab that course, it's not expensive. It'll really open your eyes on how to communicate more effectively, whether you're a 1L or someone that's been doing this for 3 decades like me. There are just certain buttons you can push to effectively and appropriately compel people to do the desired things that you need them to do to win the case for your client. So it's just tapping into what other people are doing the right way, learning it, making it a part of you. So you're sharing it your way. You're not trying to be like me or trying to be like Jason. You're you, but you're using these approaches, these principles and techniques. I think that's something I would double down on right now if I was a law school student or a new lawyer, just figuring out the practice of law.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jason. I know you got Corden, if you could give us a 30-second or minute of.
Sorry, I went on. I'm sorry about that.
No. I just want to make sure he's not late to court about your professional communication do's and don'ts. I know you're a pro at this.
Professional communication. Yeah, I think it's huge. And I do think it's relative to, again, who you are. I think communication comes in not only verbal, but how you represent who you are. Of course, social media is also part of that too. But for example, again, and I'm going to keep bringing this back to this, but I think it's my more mental health background is before you can truly know your version of communication, you have to spend some time, I'm talking about a lot of time, a lot of nasty time, reflecting on who you are, why you are the way that you are, what happened the past 20 years of your life that has really molded you into who you are right now. And who you are right now, what do you want to change? What do you want to be, like, what do you want to throw off? What do you want to add more into? Because that will change how you communicate. It changes how we represent who we are. For example, if you would have asked me to talk about all my divorce and childhood issues back in undergrad, I would have been much more reserved about it. But it comes from years of deep down reflection about who I am. And again, I think Mitch just mentioned this, it's knowing your audience. I am in an area of law where there are a lot of older women. So what do? When I go to the courthouse, I smile a lot. I have noticed, and this is just me observing, when the judge's clerk is this older lady, a kind of elderly, you got lawyers up in there, yelling, and I need this, and the other. I just walk up, smile, I'm like, hi, a good morning. And I remember, and I look up ahead of time what his or her name is. I'm like, oh yeah, Jason, I remember you, from blah, 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 blah. So knowing your audience, knowing how to use what you can to get the best result for your client. I know, and this is just an example, I know clerks that if you piss them off, they're going to make sure your case is heard last. But if they like you, you'll be right at the beginning and you'll be out in a second. So professional communication, I think, going off of that is just, regardless of regardless of what a person's title is acknowledging who they are, acknowledging that they're human, and being a human being back. I think oftentimes as lawyers, we often want to be this, big, bad lawyer. You don't have to do that 24/7 because it doesn't work 24/7. That's all.
It's good stuff. There's something special about a smile, right?
Right, absolutely. And I'm going to jump off and go put on my tie and jacket. But if anyone has any questions, I'm open to emailing and calls and whatnot. Allie has all my information. So it was wonderful meeting everyone here, as well as having a chat with Allie and the interns and Mr. Mitch. So I appreciate it.
Jason, my pleasure. Great to meet you. Can I comment about a smile real quick?
Yes, please go ahead. I just want to say real quick, Jason,
Yeah.
thank you. You're the best.
That was awesome.
Our attendees here get your contact info if they'd like. But yes, Mitch, tell us about the joy of a smile.
Well, I mean, I'm learning every single day, but I will just share with everyone, Guy Kawasaki, who is probably one of the most well-known brand ambassadors on the planet. If you don't know Guy Kawasaki, check him out, Google him, read his books. But he was one of the guys sitting next to Steve Jobs while rolling out the first iPhone. And he happens to be a local surfer here in Southern California. His son went to UCLA when my daughter went there. But Guy did a video for, I think it was Stanford Business School on the power of rapport and the power of a smile. And in his video, he teaches you how to smile, how to embrace, for those of us that have crow's feet, how to embrace, that big smile. And I'm so glad Jason brought that up, because if you're that human being who can embrace a smile when it's appropriate to smile, it just connects you with other people. It shows confidence. It shows a likability factor that, frankly, a lot of lawyers, for the reasons Jason just shared, they're afraid to show. They feel like it shows weakness. In reality, especially inside the boardroom, the mediation, arbitration, or courtroom, it's the lawyer that's in command who is friendly, who is polite to the court staff because they run the show, who stands when a jury comes in and out, who's always making sure that everybody's needs are taken care of. That's the lawyer that's connecting with the trier of fact, whether it's a judge or a jury. That's the lawyer that a jury's going to look at when there's an objection in the courtroom, and they'll start looking at you for how that objection should be ruled on instead of the judge. Now, when that happens, you need to directly look up at the judge and remind them who's running the courtroom. But when you can command the courtroom in a way where you become that leader, and it's because you're polite and kind and professional, you're not wasting time, you're asking good questions, you're not beating up witnesses on the stand, you're tough on issues, but you're kind to people. And that's the difference. And when you learn how to do that in a courtroom or out on the street, diffusing a situation, that's where you can start building your brand, your reputation, and that's how you can become one of the most sought after and successful lawyers, however you define success in your community. It's just something that I wish I'd figured out earlier in life, but I'm just sharing with everyone here, that's the way you want to roll. And if anybody has any questions, I'm at streaming.lawyer. That's not my law firm website. It's just my social media blog, streaming.lawyer. Reach out to me and I can share the resources we've talked about. Happy to answer your questions. And I'm excited to see what each and every one of you are going to be doing moving forward in your legal careers. I'm excited for you. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Fabulous, fabulous chat. Such amazing advice. So I know there were some questions we didn't get to today, but you guys, both of our panelists are willing to chat with you, answer your questions after this. So please reach out. This is your first step into what we've talked about today, right? That networking, that communication, that gaining insight and tapping into your uniqueness. I know that they're both willing to help you do that. So Mitch, sure. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. And our fabulous interns, I know Tolu, Nura, Amina, they're all amazing. So if any of our attendees have any questions for them, for me, we'll stay on here. We'll stop the recording and just sort of answer any questions or say hi to you guys. But thank you so much again, Mitch. We'll make sure all of our attendees get your questions or get your contact info, and we'll see you hopefully again soon. And we're all coming to California now that you've invited us. So we'll be there.
It's a sincere invitation, you guys. There's plenty of room on the sand for everybody's toes. We'll throw the paddleboard in the water and we'll talk law. We'll talk sunrises and sunsets. I appreciate it. Thanks for me being here. Appreciate it. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.